Today we're talking about roots, so I had to put your calculators away so you're not tempted and you make today. So we've got to talk about, what is a square root? Does anybody know what this symbol is? Will you raise your hand if you know what the symbol for the square root sign is? Couple of you? Okay, I need all hands in the air. We're going to do this together. Because you know over the 4th of July when we have those, what are they, the sparklers? You guys can write your names on the sparklers. Yeah, and then it stays there for a little bit. Okay, just do a little check mark on your finger. Check, check. Do it again. Check, check. That's a square root sign. Have you seen it when we calculated? That makes more sense. So on your notes, write down the symbol. So the symbol for square root is this. Okay, now that you've seen the symbol, raise hands in there. How many are like, oh, that's the square root sign? There's another name for it. It's a cool name. Oh, radical. Radical. It's like an old school word. Okay, so radical, square root, same thing. Are you ready? Alright, so square root, because if you had to find the square root of, for example, 9, on your notes, do you know what the square root of 9 is? Some of you do. Tay, do you know what it is? Not quite. You just squared it. He said 81, so that would be 9 squared. Let me write that on the board. So Tay, you just did this, 9 to the 2nd power. But I kind of like that you did that, Tay, because the square root is the exact opposite of this. Like add and subtract are opposite. So the square root of 9, Casey, do you know what that is? It is 3. How did you know it was 3? That was so well said. I'm going to try to repeat it in the mic. She said you've got to take the number that's inside of there, and you have to think of what times itself will equal that number. So what times itself will equal 9? Yeah, so this is really 3 times 3. Take out one of those 3's. There you go. The answer is 3. Okay, so my next question before we get into examples, if I raise hand, do any of you know what a perfect square is? Have any of you heard of that before? Does it sound familiar, but we're not quite sure? Okay, ready to list perfect squares? So squeeze it in on your notes. Write down here some examples of perfect squares. I think you guys will get this so fast. All right, perfect squares. An example of a perfect square is the number 1. 1 is a perfect square. Let me show you why. 1 is a perfect square because 1 is 1 times 1. I'm not going to tell you quite yet the definition. Let's see if you can figure it out. Another perfect square is 4. 4 is a perfect square because it's 2 times 2. Are you figuring it out? Let's give you one more example. The next perfect square would be 9. 9 is a perfect square because it's 3 times 3. Okay, can I get a hand in there? Do you know the next perfect square? So think of the pattern that's going on. Hannah, what do you think? 16 is totally the next perfect square. How come, Hannah? Because it's 4 times 4. Good job, Hannah. So that's the next perfect square. All right, what's after that one, Tevye? Good job, Tevye. 25 is the next one. How come, Tevye? It's 5 times 5. All right, let's get one more on here, and then we'll blow each other's minds. What's the next perfect square if we're going in order of perfect squares? Cindy, what's the next one? Perfect 36. Because that's, how come, Cindy? You're right, because it's 6 times 6. Okay, we can keep going on and on and on because numbers go forever. I want someone to blow the class away. Can you think of a really big perfect square? So don't go in order, just think. This one is a perfect square. So what do you have? 100. He said 100 is a perfect square. Okay, guys, can you do the math from Taylor's perfect square 100? 1 times 1 equals 100. Yeah, good job. Tristan said 10 times 10. That's perfect. It's totally a perfect square. So perfect squares have to be the same number times itself, and then it's whatever that product is. Give me a thumbs up. Does the perfect square make sense? Yeah? Okay, we're going to use the perfect squares to our advantage. And then poster right here that I ripped off the wall. It's kind of tiny. So it's got all of your factors on here, right? It's got all of it's the multiplication chart. Guys, can you see the perfect squares? Where they are. You see them? Unfortunately, we don't have a classroom size poster for this that you all can see. So if you need to come peek at this, you are more than welcome to. For the most part, we've got these down though. Alright, so now we're estimating. So we're finding the square root of 40, but I had you put your calculators back, so we've got to do this in our head. Here's the easiest way to do it. Are you ready? Think of a perfect square that is below 40, but really close to 40. Look at a hand in there. Can you think of a perfect square that's below 40, but really close to 40? So you raising your hand? Yes! So guys, you think of something that's close to this, but what's lower? Tay pointed out that 36 is a perfect square that's lower. Now you have to go higher. Think of a perfect square that's above 40. Can you think of the one that's right above it? Here you have it. 7 times 7, 49. Okay, let's stop and think about this. Is 40 really between 36 and 49? Yeah, okay, so we've got our range. It's somewhere in between those. Now the next thing you want to do, mental check. Which is 40 closer to? Is it closer to 36 or is it closer to 49? It's closer to 36. All right, so get that on your notes. So it's closest to this one. So choose your closest option. And then just think to yourself, do you know what the square root of 36 is? What times 1 equals 36? 6. So our answer, the square root of 40 is going to be about in math you can do squiggly equal sign. It says it's about 6. It's pretty dang close to 6. We're just going to estimate it and call it good. Let's do another example. So again, think of your low perfect square, think of your high perfect square, and then go from there. Okay, let's do the next problem. The directions, this one says graph the square root of 28 on a number line. Let's go through our process first. Let's think of a low perfect square and a high perfect square. So can anyone think of a low perfect square that's really dang close to 28, but it is lower than it? Can you see about it? I agree. So low is 25. Right, and think of one that's above it, but really close to it, pretty close to 28. Can you think of one that's right above it? Casey, go again. 36. Okay, now your choices. Which is it closer to? I feel like this one's kind of obvious. Okay, shout it out. Which one is it closer to? Totally. It's closer to the 25. Alright, so remind yourself it's closest to this one. So all we have to do is think, alright, well, then what's the square root of 25? Guys, you can shout this out. Good job, it's 5. So the square root of 28 is going to have to be about 5. Do you remember how to do about? It's about 5. But if we read our directions, are we done with this problem? We still have to put it on a number line. It's really great to estimate it first, because now we know that on our number line, we've got to be close to 5. So let's put 3 numbers on our number line. Let's put 4, 5, and 6. 5's going to go in the middle, because that's our answer, sort of. And then you've got to stop and think about it. Okay, the square root of 28. It's not right on 5. Do you agree with me? Now you've got to think, is it going to be below the 5 or above the 5? It's going to be above, because the square root of 25 was 5, but we have 28. 28 is barely above it. So take your 5 and just estimate it. It's probably a little bit right there. It's got to be above the 5, and right above that, just write square root of 28. You're done. You just graphed it. That's all it takes. Okay, let's go to the next exercises. So these ones, do we need to graph the next ones, guys, to the same direction? Okay, so it's back to our highs and lows. So I need a hand in there. What's a low perfect square? If we're looking at 3, it's already pretty dang low. You have to think 1, perfect. So low is 1. Okay, shout it out. Do you know the high? I heard it. 4. Which one is 3 closest to? Closest to 4. So remind yourself, this is the close one. So what is the square root of 4? Yep, square root of 2. Or excuse me, the square root of 4 is 2. So the square root of 3 is probably about 2. How ones if you agree with me? Nice. Let's do the same thing for number 2. You get a hand in there. Is what's the low perfect square? And we're looking at 8. Ashley, thanks. Perfect. 4 is our low perfect square. Alright, can I get a hand in the air? What's the high perfect square then? Hannah, go ahead. Good job. It's 9. Alright, Tego, which one is it closest to? Our low perfect square of 4 or our high perfect square of 9? Totally. Looking on your notes. Closest to this one. We're running out of room. Okay, Tego, keep going. What is the square root of 9? Good job. It's 3. So the square root of 8 has got to be close to 3. It's about 3. Okay. Kindergarten, can be on the spot. What's the low perfect square if we're focusing on 26? Good job. She's looking at her notes and she found it's 25. Good job. That's really close, huh, Haley? Alright, guys, shout it out. What would the high be then? Yeah, good job. 36. Do you agree that Haley got closer than 36 though? Haley got really close. So we've got the 25 is the closest. So the square root of 25 is what, guys? Alright, so square root of 26 is going to be about 5. Alright, so square root of 2 is what's the low on the square root of 2? Our low perfect square. Yeah, it is 1. So if that's the low, what's the high? Enter 1 is 1, so what's 2 times 2? So 4 would have to be the high. Alright, check it. Which is the 2 closest to? Totally closer to the 1. So now I'm going to do a mental check. Guys, I want your eyeballs on the board. Eyeballs on the board, eyeballs on the board. So we're going to choose 1. But do we go above the 1 or below the 1? Yeah, we go above it because it's got to be between these two. So it's got to be above the 1. Now look at this number line. There's something that tricked me when I was making copies for kids that were absent today. What's wrong with this number line? It's missing something. Do you see it? Jacob. Come on. That points me. I never really want to make this. So negative, negative, negative. So make sure you use the correct one. Don't use the negative one. So we're going to go barely above. Put it out right there. Put above it square root of 2. And we're done graphing. Okay, let's go to the next example. Okay, so next in math. What's the low on the square root of 27? I agree, 25. Alright, what's the high? 36. Which one is it closer to? It's closer to the 25, right? So what's the square root of 25? Okay, stop and do a mental check. So we're going to graph 5 on the number line. You've got to think, do we go below the 5 or above the 5? Yeah, we go above. So let's go above the 5, put it out right there, and then square root of 27 above it. Is this graph missing something also? Yeah, let's put in those negatives.